In a move that has exploded into an international scandal, the world is now watching with bated breath as the headlines erupt across every major news outlet. The story is dominating social media feeds, trending worldwide, and sparking heated debates in political circles from Washington to Port of Spain. The air is thick with speculation, and the stakes could not be higher. This is not just another political controversy. This is a revelation that could reshape the global energy landscape and redefine international relations in the Caribbean and beyond. The sheer scale of the allegations has left both seasoned analysts and everyday citizens stunned, as the implications stretch far beyond the borders of Trinidad and Tobago. As the world's attention zeroes in on this small but strategically vital nation, questions are swirling about who stands to gain, who stands to lose, and what the future holds for the region's energy sector. The sense of urgency is palpable, with every new detail fueling a firestorm of intrigue and uncertainty. Former President Donald Trump, never one to shy away from controversy, has just taken the world stage by storm. In a series of bombastic statements delivered at a packed press conference, Trump claimed to possess insider knowledge about Trinidad and Tobago's oil industry, knowledge that, according to him, has been hidden from the public for years. With cameras flashing and reporters scrambling for details, Trump alleged that secret deals, undisclosed reserves, and shadowy international partnerships have been quietly fueling the Twin Island nation's economic engine. His words sent shockwaves through diplomatic channels, with officials from both countries scrambling to respond and clarify the situation. Trump's claims were delivered with his trademark bravado, but behind the spectacle, the gravity of his accusations was unmistakable. He painted a picture of a global energy game being played behind closed doors, with Trinidad and Tobago at its center. The press conference quickly became a media circus, with journalists from around the world pressing for evidence and demanding answers. As Trump doubled down on his assertions, the world was left to wonder, is this a political maneuver, or is there a deeper truth waiting to be uncovered? What exactly are these so-called deepest oil secrets of Trinidad and Tobago? According to Trump, the country has been sitting on vast, untapped oil reserves that dwarf previous estimates. He claims that confidential documents, which he says have come into his possession, reveal a network of offshore rigs and hidden pipelines that have been quietly extracting and exporting oil under the radar of international regulators. Trump further alleges that a select group of multinational corporations, in collusion with high-ranking officials, have been reaping enormous profits while the true scale of Trinidad and Tobago's oil wealth remains concealed from its own citizens and the world at large. These revelations, if true, could have far-reaching implications for global oil markets, energy security, and the geopolitical balance of power in the region. The idea that such a small nation could hold the key to a massive, secret oil supply has ignited a frenzy of speculation among energy experts and political strategists alike. If these claims are substantiated, it could mean a dramatic shift in how oil is sourced and traded worldwide, potentially upending long-standing alliances and economic agreements. The possibility of hidden reserves also raises questions about environmental oversight, regulatory compliance, and the ethical responsibilities of those involved. The fallout is nothing short of catastrophic. Within hours of Trump's announcement, financial markets reacted with panic. Oil prices fluctuated wildly as investors tried to make sense of the new information. The stock market in Trinidad and Tobago experienced its sharpest drop in years, with energy sector shares plummeting amid fears of regulatory crackdowns and international sanctions. In the corridors of power, government officials convened emergency meetings, while opposition leaders demanded full transparency and independent investigations. International watchdogs and energy analysts are now calling for a thorough audit of Trinidad and Tobago's oil industry, and the country's reputation as a stable energy supplier is suddenly in jeopardy. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens are left reeling, wondering what these revelations mean for their jobs, their economy, and their future. The uncertainty has sparked protests in the streets, with workers and activists demanding answers and accountability from those in power. As the world waits for more details to emerge, one thing is clear: the story is far from over, and the consequences could reverberate for years to come. The eyes of the world remain fixed on Trinidad and Tobago, as the next chapter in this unfolding drama promises to be just as explosive as the last. At a recent campaign rally, former President Donald Trump took to the stage with his characteristic bravado, addressing a sea of supporters waving banners and chanting his name. The atmosphere was electric, charged with anticipation, as Trump, never one to shy away from controversy, began to speak about what he described as a matter of global importance. With a dramatic pause, he claimed to possess what he called absolute intelligence. Information so reliable, he insisted, that it could not be questioned. The crowd leaned in, eager to hear what revelation would come next. Trump, known for his flair for the dramatic, declared that this intelligence pertained to the small but strategically significant Caribbean nation of Trinidad and Tobago. He alleged that, according to his sources, the government of Trinidad and Tobago had been engaged in a decades-long campaign of deception, deliberately underreporting the true extent of its proven oil and gas reserves. This, he suggested, was not a minor oversight or a technical error, but a calculated move designed to mislead the world and manipulate global energy markets. Trump's words by Rance, delivered with his signature confidence, seemed to electrify the crowd even further, as he painted a picture of a global conspiracy that had gone unnoticed for years. He emphasized the importance of vigilance and the need for the United States to remain alert to such international maneuvers, warning that complacency could have dire consequences for American interests. Trump's allegations painted a picture of a nation sitting atop vast, untapped wealth. Oil and gas reserves that, if accurately reported, would dramatically alter the global energy landscape. He claimed that for years, Trinidad and Tobago had been presenting only a fraction of its true resources to international agencies and energy watchdogs. The implication was clear. By hiding the real numbers, the country was able to manipulate prices, control supply, and gain an unfair advantage in negotiations with foreign investors and governments. Trump's words sent ripples through the crowd, many of whom had never given much thought to the Caribbean's role in the world's energy supply. Yet, as he spoke, the former president wove a narrative of intrigue and high-stakes maneuvering, suggesting that this was not merely a local issue, but one with far-reaching consequences for the United States and its allies. He argued that the global energy market is a delicate ecosystem where even small shifts in supply or demand can have outsized effects on prices and political relationships. By allegedly concealing its true reserves, Trinidad and Tobago, in Trump's telling, was not just protecting its own interests, but actively shaping the fortunes of nations far beyond its borders. The crowd, many of whom were unfamiliar with the intricacies of international energy politics, listened intently as Trump described how such actions could impact everything from gas prices at home to the stability of entire regions abroad. According to Trump, the deception was not being carried out in isolation. He alleged that Trinidad and Tobago had entered into a secret agreement with a major geopolitical rival. Though he stopped short of naming the country directly, his insinuations pointed toward a nation with significant interests in undermining Western energy dominance. The deal, he claimed, involved the covert transfer of information, technology, and perhaps even direct financial incentives, all designed to keep the true scale of Trinidad and Tobago's reserves hidden from the prying eyes of Western governments and corporations. In this version of events, the Caribbean nation was not merely a passive player, but an active participant in a global game of cat and mouse, working in concert with powerful allies to shift the balance of power in the energy sector. The suggestion was that this alliance, forged in secrecy, posed a direct threat to the interests of the United States and its partners, potentially destabilizing markets and undermining the security of energy supplies. Trump's narrative implied a level of sophistication and coordination that, if true, would rival the most complex international conspiracies. He described a world where backroom deals and coded communications were the norm, and where the fate of entire economies could hinge on the decisions made by a handful of leaders in distant capitals. The former president's rhetoric was designed to stoke both suspicion and urgency, urging his audience to recognize the stakes involved and the need for decisive action. Trump did not stop there. He went on to claim that the hidden reserves in Trinidad and Tobago were, in his words, 10 times bigger than they say. This assertion, if true, would mean that the country was sitting on a veritable treasure trove of energy resources, far exceeding the estimates provided to international organizations such as the International Energy Agency and OPEC. The implications of such a discrepancy are enormous. If Trinidad and Tobago's reserves are indeed as vast as Trump suggests, the country could potentially flood the market with oil and gas, driving down prices and destabilizing economies that rely on energy exports. Alternatively, by keeping the reserves hidden, the nation could wield significant influence over global supply, using its resources as a bargaining chip in international negotiations. Trump's claims, though unsubstantiated, tapped into deep-seated anxieties about energy security and the potential for manipulation by foreign actors. The idea that a small Caribbean nation could hold such sway over global markets was both alarming and captivating, fueling speculation and debate among analysts and policymakers alike. Trump's remarks also raised questions about the effectiveness of international oversight and the ability of global institutions to monitor and verify the true extent of a country's resources. He suggested that if such a significant discrepancy could go undetected for so long, it might point to broader vulnerabilities in the systems designed to ensure transparency and accountability in the energy sector. This, he argued, was a wake-up call for the United States and its allies to strengthen their own intelligence and monitoring capabilities, lest they be caught off guard by similar schemes elsewhere in the world. The former president went further, accusing Trinidad and Tobago of siphoning off profits from these hidden reserves in a sophisticated scheme that, he argued, undermined the interests of Western energy companies, and by extension, the economic security of the United States and its allies. He painted a picture of clandestine deals, conducted in shadowy boardrooms, with money changing hands under the table, and tanker ships quietly transporting oil to undisclosed destinations. According to Trump, these actions were not only unethical, but potentially illegal, violating international agreements and threatening the stability of the global energy system. He called for a thorough investigation, demanding that the United States and its partners take immediate action to uncover the truth and hold those responsible to account. Trump's rhetoric was characteristically forceful, appealing to his base's sense of patriotism and their distrust of foreign governments. He framed the issue as a test of American resolve, urging his supporters to stand firm in defense of the nation's interests and to demand transparency and accountability from those who would seek to deceive and exploit the global community. As the rally continued, the crowd responded with cheers and applause, energized by the prospect of uncovering a hidden conspiracy and reasserting American leadership on the world stage. Whether Trump's allegations will stand up to scrutiny remains to be seen, but his words have already sparked a new round of debate about the role of energy in international relations and the lengths to which nations will go to protect their interests. The controversy has prompted renewed calls for oversight and reform, with some experts warning that the world's reliance on fossil fuels makes it especially vulnerable to manipulation and secrecy. As the dust settles from Trump's explosive claims, one thing is clear: the intersection of politics, energy, and global power remains as volatile and consequential as ever, and the world will be watching closely to see what revelations, if any, emerge in the weeks and months ahead. The result was immediate chaos. In the blink of an eye, the world's financial markets were thrown into a state of utter turmoil. On trading floors from Port of Spain to New York, London to Hong Kong, the atmosphere shifted from routine anticipation to outright panic. Traders, who just moments before had been calmly monitoring their screens, suddenly found themselves scrambling to make sense of the unfolding disaster. Phones rang off the hook, voices rose in confusion and alarm, and the once orderly hum of commerce was replaced by a cacophony of shouts and urgent commands. The news, spreading like wildfire across social media and financial news networks, left no one untouched. The sense of uncertainty was palpable as investors and analysts alike tried to process the implications of what had just been revealed. The world watched as the financial heartbeat of Trinidad, and by extension the Caribbean, skipped, faltered, and threatened to stop altogether. In those first few hours, the global financial system felt as if it was teetering on the edge of a precipice, with every new headline adding fuel to the fire. The interconnectedness of modern markets meant that what began as a local crisis in Trinidad quickly became a global concern, with ripple effects spreading across continents and asset classes. The sheer speed at which the panic spread was a stark reminder of how fragile confidence can be in an age of instant communication and high-frequency trading. The revelation, whether verified or not, has triggered a collapse in investor confidence. In the world of finance, perception is often as powerful as reality, and in this case, the mere suggestion of wrongdoing was enough to send shockwaves through the system. Investors, both large and small, began to question the stability of their holdings. Hedge funds and pension managers, responsible for billions in assets, initiated emergency meetings to reassess their exposure to Trinidadian markets. The red numbers cascading down digital stock tickers told a story of fear and uncertainty. In living rooms and offices around the globe, people watched in disbelief as the value of Trinidad's leading companies plummeted. The financial news channels ran continuous coverage, with experts speculating on the potential fallout and what it might mean for the broader Caribbean region. The sense of distress was not limited to professional investors. Ordinary citizens, too, felt the impact as their savings and retirement accounts took a sudden and dramatic hit. The psychological effect was immediate and profound, as confidence in the market's ability to recover was shaken to its core. For many, the crisis brought back memories of past financial meltdowns, reigniting old fears about the safety of their investments and the reliability of the institutions they once trusted. The uncertainty was compounded by the speed at which events unfolded, leaving little time for rational analysis or measured responses. Instead, panic selling and knee-jerk reactions became the order of the day, amplifying the sense of chaos and deepening the losses. As the hours ticked by, it became clear that this was not just a temporary blip, but the beginning of a much larger reckoning for Trinidad's financial system and its place in the global economy. International energy partners are now demanding emergency audits and threatening to freeze contracts. The global energy sector, already on edge due to volatile prices and shifting geopolitical alliances, found itself facing a new and unexpected crisis. Major oil and gas companies, many of which had significant investments in Trinidad, convened emergency meetings to discuss their options. Executives, their faces etched with concern, pored over contracts and financial statements, searching for any sign of exposure to the alleged deception. Legal teams were mobilized to review the fine print, while public relations departments scrambled to craft statements that would reassure shareholders and the public. At press conferences, industry leaders spoke in measured tones, but the underlying anxiety was impossible to hide. The threat of contract freezes loomed large, with some partners openly questioning whether they could continue to do business with Trinidad under the current circumstances. The possibility of drawn-out legal battles and costly arbitration proceedings became all too real, as trust, once the bedrock of international commerce, was eroded by suspicion and doubt. The ripple effects extended far beyond the boardrooms as suppliers, contractors, and local workers all faced the prospect of layoffs and lost income. For the thousands of families whose livelihoods depended on the energy sector, the uncertainty was devastating. Small businesses that provided services to oil and gas companies braced for a sharp downturn, while local governments worried about the loss of tax revenue and the potential for social unrest. The crisis also exposed the vulnerabilities of a system that had long relied on a single sector for economic growth, raising urgent questions about the need for diversification and resilience in the face of global shocks. As the world's media descended on Trinidad, the country's leaders found themselves under intense scrutiny, forced to answer difficult questions about transparency, governance, and the future of their most important industry. Trinidad's currency and stock market are in free fall amid accusations of state-level deception, and the government is facing a crisis of legitimacy on the global stage. The Trinidadian dollar, once considered a stable currency in the region, began to lose value at an alarming rate. Currency traders, sensing an opportunity, or perhaps simply trying to limit their losses, began to sell off Trinidadian assets in droves. The stock market, already reeling from the initial shock, saw trading volumes spike as investors rushed to exit their positions. The government, caught off guard by the speed and severity of the crisis, struggled to respond. Officials issued statements denying any wrongdoing, but their words did little to calm the markets. International observers, including representatives from the International Monetary Fund and World Bank, expressed concern about the potential for contagion. The fear was that the crisis in Trinidad could spread to other Caribbean economies, many of which were already grappling with their own challenges. On the streets of Port of Spain, ordinary citizens lined up outside banks, hoping to withdraw their savings before the situation worsened. The sense of betrayal was widespread, as people questioned how such a crisis could have been allowed to happen. The government's credibility, both at home and abroad, was in tatters, and calls for accountability grew louder with each passing day. As the days wore on, the economic pain began to seep into every corner of society. Businesses shuttered their doors, unable to cope with the volatility. Prices for everyday goods soared as the currency weakened, putting additional strain on families already struggling to make ends meet. The social fabric of Trinidad, once held together by a sense of shared prosperity, began to fray as frustration and anger mounted. Protests erupted in major cities with citizens demanding answers and immediate action from their leaders. The government, under mounting pressure, announced a series of emergency measures, but these were seen by many as too little, too late. The international community watched with growing alarm, aware that the fate of Trinidad could have far-reaching implications for the stability of the entire Caribbean region. This isn't just an accusation, it's an economic detonation that could redefine the Caribbean's energy map. The shockwaves from Trinidad's crisis are being felt far beyond its shores. For decades, Trinidad has been a linchpin in the Caribbean's energy sector, supplying oil and natural gas to markets around the world. Its strategic location and abundant resources made it a key player in regional development, and its success was often held up as a model for other island nations. Now, that reputation is in jeopardy. The sudden collapse in confidence has forced neighboring countries to reconsider their own economic strategies. Some are exploring new partnerships, while others are bracing for the possibility of reduced investment and slower growth. The energy sector, once a source of pride and prosperity, is now a battleground for competing interests and shifting alliances. Environmental groups, long critical of the region's reliance on fossil fuels, see an opportunity to push for a transition to renewable energy. At the same time, political leaders are under pressure to restore stability and reassure both domestic and international stakeholders. The stakes could not be higher. If Trinidad fails to recover, the entire Caribbean could face a period of prolonged economic uncertainty. The world is watching, and the outcome of this crisis will shape the region's future for years to come. In the midst of the turmoil, one thing is clear: the old certainties have been swept away, and a new, more uncertain era has begun. The lessons of this crisis will echo for generations, serving as a stark warning about the dangers of complacency, the fragility of trust, and the urgent need for transparency and reform in a rapidly changing world. As Trinidad and its neighbors chart a path forward, the choices they make now will determine not only their own destinies, but the fate of the Caribbean as a whole. This story is developing by the minute and, honestly, it impacts global energy prices. Share this video in all your groups and with family to ensure everyone is informed. To follow the stunning fallout of this breaking geopolitical bombshell, you must stay with us. Hit subscribe, ring the notification bell, and, yeah, share this report widely now.